The bell tolls before the sun does. Low, hollow, wet with fog. 6 slow chimes. You know it isn't for church. It's for the cart. Somewhere down the crooked streets of this gray-swallowed city, a wooden wheel is creaking over cobblestones, and a man with no shoes is shouting, "Bring out your dead," in a voice that's already hoarse with plague dust. You haven't opened your eyes yet, but you can already taste the day. It tastes like vinegar and rot. Your name is not important. You once trained in Montpellier, though it was more an apprenticeship than anything scholarly. The man who taught you medicine also taught you how to pull teeth, drain boils, and gamble poorly. He died in a brothel during a winter outbreak of syphilis. You inherited his books, and now you're the only doctor left in this quarter. You sit up on your straw-stuffed pallet. The wool blanket peels from your body like wet paper. First, the linen undershirt, stiff with the residue of days. Then the black robe, coated in wax, cracking at the joints, smelling faintly of lamp oil and ashes. You tie a sash of rosemary sprigs around your waist. Next comes the most important piece, the mask. It is leather, curved into a bird-like beak, with glass lenses for eyes. It makes you look like something between an alchemist and a carrion crow. Inside the beak, you stuff the usual: lavender, lemon balm, cinnamon bark, rose petals if you have them, clove and garlic, always. You don't know if it works, but it smells better than the bodies. You believe, because you've been taught, that the plague travels by corrupted air called miasma, the foul fog that rolls from damp wells, crowded cesspits, and the sinful breath of the dying. To fight it, you carry a pomander, a perforated orb filled with perfumed herbs, which you swing gently as you walk, a cane, long, hooked, for inspecting boils without touch, a leather pouch of dried toads, leeches, and powdered bone. Your remedies are limited. You've tried lancing buboes. You've applied poultices made from butter and onions. You've bled patients with fleams and razors, sometimes until they faint, hoping to balance their humors. The results are mixed. More often than not, they die. But at least you look like a doctor. And in these days, appearance is half the battle. You step into the street. The sun is rising, but it is not warm. Light here has no comfort, only clarity. Everything is gray: the fog, the walls, the faces. The doors are marked with red crosses, some with notes, "Lord have mercy," others with nothing but a smear of black pitch. A dog darts across the alley with something limp in its jaws. You don't look too closely. Your first house is always the same: a brewer's wife, now widowed. She took in boarders until all but one left or died. She opens the door halfway. Her hands are raw. You nod, and she leads you into the cellar. The boy lies on the floor, no more than 20, face the color of dirty snow, sweat beading in his hairline, one eye swollen shut, a black lump the size of an egg beneath his arm. You don't touch him. You take your cane and nudge his side. He groans. Still alive. You ask the woman how long. 3 days, she whispers. You tell her what to do. Burn rosemary in a bowl near his bed. Soak cloth in vinegar and wrap his wrists. Pray. You leave her a small paper of ground herbs. You do not charge her. You do not stay long. As you leave, she kisses your hand through your glove. You do not feel it. At the end of the alley, a cart squeals to a halt. Its driver, the Undertaker, hops down. His boots are splattered with something brown. He's younger than you, but older than hope. His face is hidden behind a scarf. His hands are wrapped in cloth soaked with pitch and wax. 6 more today, he says. 3 of them kids. You nod. He lights a pipe with shaking fingers and doesn't ask how your morning is going. You help him load the bodies into the back. He whistles a hymn as he works. Not because he's devout, he just doesn't like the silence. You don't blame him. One body twitches. You both stop. Then the chest falls still. Just gas. You've seen it before. The Undertaker spits, and the cart rolls on. The rats are bolder now. You see one hop from a corpse's ribcage before disappearing beneath a butcher's stall. Another scuttles through the shuttered chapel door, tail flicking behind like a fuse on fire. Once you would have panicked. But now you merely make a mental note. There are more rats here than last week, which means more deaths are coming. You suspect, though cannot prove, that the fleas on their backs have something to do with it. You saw them once. Small, dark dots leaping from man to man in the crowded poorhouse. The man died within the day. So did the next 4 in his bedrow. The bishop says it's a punishment from God. The guildmaster blames the bad wine. And the city guard just burned the mattresses. You visit the apothecary next, a narrow shop wedged between a coopery and a candlemaker's stall. It smells like boiled pears, tallow, and sharp herbs. The apothecary is an old woman with a limp and hands that shake, but never when she pours. She gives you camphor and vinegar for rubbing on the skin, sage, rue, and mint for your mask, a tiny packet of opium for your nightmares. You hesitate, then pocket it. She looks at you over her spectacles. More monks dying, she says. Last rites don't help if the priest is sick too. You nod. She leans in closer. They say one of the dead rose in the night, walked out the charnel house, looking for his wife. You don't reply. You've heard it before. Grief, you think, is louder than reason. By mid-morning, the charnel house is full. 50 bodies, piled like firewood. Some are wrapped in blankets. Others are naked, blistered, swollen, their skin bursting with purple boils and black bruises. The Undertaker meets you there. He hands you a cup of weak ale. You drink it gratefully, not because it tastes good, but because it's the only thing cold. You ask how he sleeps. Not much, he says. My daughter thinks I'm a ghoul. You don't laugh. You both know you're halfway there. He tells you the city council plans to dig another trench. The last one is full. They were supposed to bless it, but the priest fainted. You suggest burning the bodies. He gives you a look. The smoke will sicken the rest. You know he's right. And yet, it feels like no solution is clean anymore. You take out your cane. You prod the chest of a boy who couldn't have been older than 10. His mouth is frozen open. There's dried blood beneath his nose. His belly is swollen. His eyes clouded. You mark it in your notebook. Age, 10 approximate. Symptoms, buboes under arms, blood from mouth, rapid swelling. Time from onset to death, unknown, likely under 48 hours. You've started documenting each case as best you can, not because you think it'll save anyone now, but because someone should remember. Even if the bodies rot, even if the names fade, the facts should remain. You owe them that much. Later, back at your cell, you review your notes. There are 3 competing theories for the plague. Miasma theory, the bad air from filth, swamps, and sin. Humoral imbalance, an excess of black bile or corrupted blood. Astrological conjunctions, the alignment of Saturn and Jupiter in 1345. You don't discount any. You've tried. Bloodletting at the ankle or wrist. Pigeon carcasses placed on buboes. Live plucking of the swellings with a scalpel and heated knife. Burning sulfur in the corners of infected homes. Fumigating rooms with juniper, laurel, and wormwood. And once, at the urging of a frantic merchant, you fed a dying man a paste of ground emerald and goat's urine. He vomited for 2 hours, then died. You no longer accept emeralds. By noon, you receive a letter. It's from your sister in Lyon. You recognize her script. You smell lavender on the paper, but you do not open it. You place it on the shelf beside the others. Unread. Why? Because you need something that is still untouched, still clean, still unspoiled by death. Once you read it, it will be part of this world. And you aren't sure you can bear that. Not yet. At sunset, you update your journal. 2 more children today. 1 priest. Undertaker spoke of dreams, the dead speaking to him. I feel weaker. Vision swimming. Fingers trembling. Must continue treatments. Must stay rational. The Lord helps those who help themselves. If he is watching at all, you close the book. You re-soak the herbs in your beak. You light a candle. Outside, the bell tolls again. 7 times. A cart rolls. A mother wails. A window closes. They call it a house, but it's really a ruin held up by habit and fear. The beams sag. The shutters are nailed shut. The front door has a white cloth tied around the handle, a sign for infected keep out. Though anyone with a working nose would know already. You knock once. A girl answers, no older than 12. Her face is streaked with ash. Her mouth is firm. Her eyes do not blink. You ask for the father. She shakes her head. The rats ate him. We burned what we could. You nod and step inside. Inside the plague house, the heat is oppressive. The stench is almost solid. You wave your pomander lazily, as if it will do more than perfume the rot. There are 3 still alive. A woman, delirious and murmuring a prayer in broken Latin. A man, unconscious, fever bright with purple blotches spreading along his jaw. A boy, barely breathing, cradling a crucifix like it's warm bread. You crouch beside the woman. You ask her name. She does not respond. You peel back the sheet and inspect the swelling at her neck. It's worse than yesterday. The bubo has ruptured. You reach for your vial of vinegar and a small cloth. You clean it gently. You try not to gag. You whisper something, not a prayer, but a pattern, just a sound to stay steady. You tell the girl what to do. She listens without emotion. You give her a bundle of dried sage. She asks, will they die? You pause. Yes. She nods. Then she asks, will I? You don't answer. She nods again. As you leave, you see him. Father Emile. His robes are stained with sweat and soot. His crucifix is carved from driftwood. The gold one was pawned weeks ago for bread. He carries no incense now, only oil and a trembling voice. You tell him it's dangerous. He smiles. Christ dined with lepers, he says. So I shall sit beside the dying. You admire him and fear for him. By next week, you suspect he'll be in your notes. By late afternoon, the trench is open. A dozen men shovel dirt without speaking. Their faces are covered with soaked cloth. Some hum. Most stare at their boots. The pit smells of turned earth and what lies beneath it. The undertaker waves you over. You should see this. You follow him down the row. He stops at a cart half filled with corpses. One body, a woman in her 30s, has something strange. A rash, yes. Buboes, yes. But her arms are bent behind her, as if broken. Her mouth is frozen in a scream. She died like that, he says. Whole family gone. You bend close. There are bite marks on her shoulder. She turned on them, he says. Or maybe they turned on her. You shake your head. There are no rules now, only instincts. You return home at dusk. The robe comes off. The gloves, too. You place them in vinegar. You scrub your hands with lye and water until the skin is raw. You light a candle. You drink wine mixed with honey and dried orange peel. You sit. You breathe. And for the first time that day, you remove the mask. The air touches your face like a stranger. You rub your eyes. You press your palms into them until you see stars. You look in the cracked mirror. Your skin is pale. Your lips cracked. You've begun to talk to yourself without noticing. You make one note in your journal. The girl did not cry. As darkness creeps in, you hear the howl of dogs, the clatter of shutters, a distant hymn sung too slowly to be joyful. Someone bangs on a door. Someone screams. Someone laughs, hysterical and alone. You close the window. You take the packet of opium from your coat. You hesitate, then put it back. You need to remember. Someone must. Even as the city forgets its own name, even as the streets rot into silence, you must remember. Because if not you, then who? You sleep only because your body forgets not to. And when you dream, it's never of before. You dream of eyes, dozens of them, staring at you from behind plague masks. You dream of children crawling from mass graves, asking if they were good. You dream of the Undertaker singing psalms as he buries you by accident. You do not wake in sweat. You wake in silence. Because outside, the bells have stopped. And that is worse. You are called again before dawn. A hammering on your shutter. You rise, robe half-fastened, mask asking. It's the night guard. Helmet dented. Sword rusted. Eyes full of wine and panic. They're coughing blood on Crown Street, he mutters. Whole row of them. You follow him through alleys black with ash and frost. Your pomander is out, your cane in hand. He says nothing else, but you know the look. He knows it's too late. The house is barely standing. Smoke wafts from the chimney, meaning someone still believes in warmth. Inside, it's quiet. Too quiet. You find them in bed, all four. Father, mother, daughter, infant. No signs of struggle. No sores on the baby. No food in the pantry. They chose stillness. The father has a rosary in one hand and a flask in the other. You sit. You do not move them. You light a candle. You close their eyes, and you breathe in the herbs from your mask. The miasma cannot touch you now. You return just as the sky pinks. Birdsong, impossibly, is heard. Your robe is heavy. Your arms weak. You open your journal. For more gone. Family chose peace over pain. I cannot blame them. I fear the Undertaker is next. He coughs now. I have begun to forget colors. The sky was violet once, I think. The girl still does not cry. You close the book. You do not cry either. There's no time. Outside, a boy plays in the street with a stick and hoop. Somewhere, a priest sings a cracked hymn. The Undertaker sharpens his shovel. The rats feast. The city waits. And you rise again. You tie the mask. You adjust the herbs. And you walk once more into the fog of death. Because this is your job. Because someone must. Because tomorrow will bring more doors with crosses. More bodies in blankets. More ash. More balsam. This was one day in the life of a real plague doctor. Men who wore waxed robes, carried pomanders, and tried desperately to apply humoral theory to a catastrophe beyond all science of their day. It was also a day in the life of the Undertakers, the silent bearers of death who buried hundreds with no names, no prayers, and no thanks. They did not save lives. They carried the memory of the lost. And sometimes, that was enough. What would you have done in his shoes? Could you wear the beak and face a dying city, day after day? Let us know in the comments below. Your thoughts, your emotions, your favorite detail. And if you're still awake, the story is just beginning. The day starts with silence. And that's the worst part. Because in the city of the dying, silence doesn't mean peace. It means someone died in the night, and no one was left to scream. You swing your legs off the straw mat. Your boots are still damp from yesterday. You don't change your clothes. You stopped bothering weeks ago. The pitch-soaked cloth you wrap around your hands smells like smoke and vinegar. You tie it tight, tighter than necessary. Your back aches. Your knuckles creak. You were 32 last spring. You feel 90 now. Your cart isn't yours, not really. It was taken from a brewer who fled the city. The smell of hops still clings to the wood. You nailed the sideboards back on yourself. Reinforced the wheels with bits from a blacksmith's doorframe. It carries rope, linens, vinegar-soaked tarps, and a rusted shovel. Sometimes it carries food. Mostly it carries the dead. You don't name them. You don't ask. You just collect. It's always worst in the narrow places, where the stone traps the heat, where the smell never leaves. You bang your fist on the first shutter. No answer. You knock again. A frail voice calls. He's in the loft. Couldn't bring him down. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You nod. She doesn't see you. You shoulder open the door. It groans like it's dying, too. Inside, the man is curled in a corner of the loft, his arms clutching a pillow. He looks peaceful, aside from the blue skin and the flies around his mouth. You wrap him in the tarp, lower him down. The woman offers you a biscuit wrapped in cloth. You shake your head. You tip your cap instead. You meet him on Mill Street. The man in the beaked mask. You call him Document. You don't know his name. He doesn't know yours. You nod. He nods back. That's how it's always been. He walks with that stiff, slow gait, like he's afraid the cobblestones will bite him. He's the only man who still writes anything down. You once asked him why. He said, so we don't forget them. You didn't have the heart to tell him you'd already forgotten most. The grave trench is at the edge of the city, past the burnt abbey, past the lemon trees, now black with soot. It's deeper now, 15 feet, maybe more. You know because you fell in once. took 3 men and a rope to pull you out. You cracked 2 ribs on a jawbone and landed face first in someone's cousin. You never told anyone you cried after that. You tell people it was just the dust. There used to be priests. Now there's just you. You say the words you remember. From dust we come, to dust we go. Sometimes it's Latin. Sometimes it's nonsense. Sometimes it's just the sound of the shovel hitting dirt. You bury them in rows, shoulder to shoulder, without coffins, without markers. Only the rich get names now. You think that's backwards. The rich had names all their lives. One night, 3 days ago, you caught someone trying to dig up the pit. A grave robber. A boy no older than 16. Scrawny. Smelled like boiled leeks. He was after rings, maybe teeth. Or worse, organs. Some apothecaries pay for materials. You grabbed him by the collar and shoved him into the mud. He begged. He had sisters. He had nothing else. You let him go. Then you buried another layer just to be safe. You don't remember when you last bathed. But you wash your hands at least 5 times a day. Vinegar. Lie. Wine, if someone gives you leftovers. You've burned 2 sets of gloves. Your hands are cracked, but clean. You tell yourself that's what matters. You told your daughter the same thing before you sent her away to the countryside. You haven't heard from her since. You tell yourself that's a good sign. By sundown, your cart is full. 7 today. 3 old, 2 young, 2 in between. One had a stuffed rabbit clutched so tight you had to break his fingers to free him from the blanket. You tell yourself he was already gone. You hum a lullaby as you shovel. No one hears it but the worms. Before all this, you were just a cooper's son. You built barrels for wine and salted fish. You whistled while you worked. You had a wife who sold candles, a daughter who talked too much, and a pig named Matilda who always found a way to eat your shoes. Your life was small, but it was yours. Then the pig died. Then your wife. Then the wine dried up, the candles melted, and suddenly you were the only one left who didn't mind touching the dead. Now you sleep beside vinegar barrels, and your daughter lives with her aunt 2 towns away. If she's still alive at all, you pray for her every night, and sometimes you forget her name. You hate the moments when people ask you to wait. I just need a few more minutes, they say. Or, he hasn't passed yet. You understand. Of course you do. But you also know what comes next. The stench, the swelling, the flies, the tears that turn into screams. You stand outside the window of a tailor's home. He's laid out on the table, still breathing. Barely. His wife presses a cloth to his forehead. She sees you and nods. He doesn't. You sit on the stoop and wait. You hum again. Not because it comforts them, but because it drowns out the sound of the gurgling that comes near the end. When she comes out, she doesn't cry. She just hands you his ring. For the next one, she says. You nod. You don't ask who the next one is. You never do. You take a shortcut through the Merchant's Square and find a city guard throwing a boy into a wall. The boy stole bread. The baker's dead, but the guard doesn't care. You know the guard. His name is Estienne. He once gave your wife a flower after she helped him stitch a torn sleeve. You put a hand on his shoulder. Let the boy go, you say. No one's baking anymore. Estienne doesn't argue. He just walks away, sword dragging behind him. You give the boy a hunk of onion cheese from your satchel. He runs before you can ask his name. Good. Names make things harder. There are days you feel like you're watching yourself from somewhere else. You see your hands tie the ropes. You hear your voice say, I'm sorry. You feel the cart's weight behind you as you pull it over a cobbled hill. But it's like watching a puppet on strings, one that looks like you but isn't. Then you step in something wet, or a child grabs your sleeve, or the wind shifts and brings you the scent of cinnamon from someone's forgotten pantry. And suddenly you're back in your body, breathing, hurting, remembering. You hate those moments most of all. You stop by the old church on the corner of Rue de Cendres. The chapel bell is broken. The priest is dead. The pews are empty. But someone left candles burning near the altar. You light one too. Not for God, exactly, but for anyone who might still be watching. You kneel beside the stone font. You don't pray. You just sit. You feel the ache in your knees. You feel your ribs press against the fabric of your coat. You feel something inside you shift, a tear, maybe, or a sigh trying to be born. But you hold it in. You always do. Because tomorrow there will be more to bury. And grief takes time you don't have. Before all this, you were just a cooper's son. You built barrels for wine and salted fish. You whistled while you worked. You had a wife who sold candles, a daughter who talked too much, and a pig named Matilda who always found a way to eat your shoes. Your life was small, but it was yours. Then the pig died. Then your wife. Then the wine dried up, the candles melted, and suddenly you were the only one left who didn't mind touching the dead. Now you sleep beside vinegar barrels, and your daughter lives with her aunt 2 towns away. If she's still alive at all. You pray for her every night, and sometimes you forget her name. You hate the moments when people ask you to wait. I just need a few more minutes, they say. Or, he hasn't passed yet. You understand. Of course you do. But you also know what comes next. The stench, the swelling, the flies, the tears that turn into screams. You stand outside the window of a tailor's home. He's laid out on the table, still breathing. Barely. His wife presses a cloth to his forehead. She sees you and nods. He doesn't. You sit on the stoop and wait. You hum again, not because it comforts them, but because it drowns out the sound of the gurgling that comes near the end. When she comes out, she doesn't cry. She just hands you his ring. For the next one, she says. You nod. You don't ask who the next one is. You never do. You take a shortcut through the Merchant's Square and find a city guard throwing a boy into a wall. The boy stole bread. The baker's dead, but the guard doesn't care. You know the guard. His name is Estienne. He once gave your wife a flower after she helped him stitch a torn sleeve. You put a hand on his shoulder. Let the boy go, you say. No one's baking anymore. Estienne doesn't argue. He just walks away, sword dragging behind him. You give the boy a hunk of onion cheese from your satchel. He runs before you can ask his name. Good. Names make things harder. There are days you feel like you're watching yourself from somewhere else. You see your hands tie the ropes. You hear your voice say, I'm sorry. You feel the cart's weight behind you as you pull it over a cobbled hill. But it's like watching a puppet on strings. One that looks like you, but isn't. Then you step in something wet. Or a child grabs your sleeve. Or the wind shifts and brings you the scent of cinnamon from someone's forgotten pantry. And suddenly you're back in your body, breathing, hurting, remembering. You hate those moments most of all. You stop by the old church on the corner of Rue de Cendres. The chapel bell is broken. The priest is dead. The pews are empty. But someone left candles burning near the altar. You light one too. Not for God exactly, but for anyone who might still be watching. You kneel beside the stone font. You don't pray. You just sit. You feel the ache in your knees. You feel your ribs press against the fabric of your coat. You feel something inside you shift, a tear maybe, or a sigh trying to be born. But you hold it in. You always do. Because tomorrow there will be more to bury. And grief takes time you don't have. You find him again near the abandoned bakery. The doctor. He's kneeling beside a boy, maybe 6, who looks more wax than flesh. The boy's eyes are open. His mouth too. You glance once and look away. You've seen enough open mouths to know when the soul has slipped out. The doctor doesn't speak. You don't either. He stands slowly, as if rising out of water. The beaked mask turns toward you. You offer him a sip from your flask. He declines, like always. Dreams again, you ask. He nods. Dead speaking Latin this time, he says. Very fluent. You chuckle. You don't laugh often anymore, but something about his voice makes it possible. You don't talk about your own dreams, because you don't have them. Not anymore. That afternoon, a messenger on horseback approaches you, rare these days. He's clean, too clean. He wears the crest of a wealthy family that still pretends the walls will keep the plague out. He hands you a sealed scroll. Inside, a letter. The Lady Isabeau de Saint Favor requests your immediate service. Her husband has passed. She desires discretion. There will be payment. In silver. You squint. Discretion. The dead don't embarrass easily, but silver is silver. You bring your cart to the back entrance of the manor. They don't let you in. A maid in gloves and a mask brings the body out on a silk-covered board. You ask no questions, but you notice the bruising on his neck. Too small for plague, too deliberate. You take the body, you nod, you leave, and you bury it away from the others, under a tree, because silver doesn't spend well if you're dead, and nobles like their secrets deep. Back at the trench, the boys are talking again. Not boys, really, men hollowed into boys by fear and hunger. They speak of a body that sat up in the cart, eyes rolling like marbles. They say another blinked, even after 3 days dead. You tell them they've been too long near the smoke. They nod, but you notice they sleep farther from the pit now. And you can't blame them, because you too sometimes hear things. At night, when it's too quiet, whispers in a language no one speaks anymore. And once, just once, you saw a corpse smile. You told yourself it was the muscles, and you believed it. Mostly. Some nights, when you've done all the digging, the lifting, the wrapping, the shoveling, you walk, past the walls, past the last hut, past the scorched trees where the herbalists once gathered. There's a stone near the edge of the forest, a flat one. You sit there. It's the only place you feel like you aren't surrounded by ghosts. You watch the stars, though you don't know their names. You try to count how many don't blink, because blinking means fire, and fire means people, and people mean work. You wish for clouds, just once. You wish for rain. It comes just after sunset. 3 soft knocks. Not urgent, not angry, just there. You assume it's another collection. You open the door, and it's her, your daughter. Dusty shoes, ash in her braids, taller than you remember. You freeze. She doesn't run into your arms. That was never her way. She just says, "They're gone. Aunt Lucette, Cousin Jean, all of them." You ask her if she's eaten. She nods. You ask again. She lies. You sit her by the hearth, pour her some broth. She doesn't cry. She never did. She just looks at you like you're the last thing left in the world that remembers her name. And maybe you are. You return to the trench alone. Too many today. Couldn't leave them. The cart creaks under the weight of 8. The stars are sharp tonight. The moon refuses to rise. You dig with numb hands. Your breath comes in clouds. You talk to yourself, to the bodies, to the dirt. You place them gently. Even now, even this late. You tuck a sprig of rosemary under one child's blanket. You don't know why. Maybe to keep rats away. Maybe to keep memories close. You cover them with care. You whisper, "Go easy." You always do. You sit on the edge of the trench and let your legs dangle. You look up at the sky, then down at your boots. And you wonder, is this penance? Are you the last man on earth? Or are you the only one still doing what needs to be done? No one praises you. No one curses you either. You exist in the quiet place between prayer and plague, between heaven and rot. And you realize something. It's not that death doesn't scare you. It's that life has become too heavy to carry alone. You return home just as the wind changes. The smell follows you, always. You wash. You eat. You check on your daughter. She's already asleep, curled like she used to when she had a stuffed goose named Emile. You sit by the window and stare at the fire. You think of the doctor, of the boy with the open eyes, of the noble with the bruised neck. And you write something in the soot on your wall. Still breathing, not because it matters, but because tomorrow you may not be. And that too would be a weight lifted. Before the mask, before the cane, before the trench and the cross on the door, there was theory. You were taught that the human body was ruled by 4 fluids: blood, light and hot; phlegm, cold and wet; yellow bile, dry and hot; black bile, cold and dry. Health was balance; sickness, imbalance. The plague, a storm of bile and phlegm in the blood. They didn't teach you this in a university. You read it yourself by candlelight in stolen scrolls and borrowed books. Galen, Avicenna, Hippocrates. names spoken with reverence, even though they'd been dead for 1,000 years. No one dared question them. Even now, as you stand over a man whose tongue has turned black, you wonder which humor he offended. Was it excess melancholy? Or was it simply fate? Your satchel is worn, soft at the edges, stained with God knows what. Inside, leeches, kept in a glass jar that used to hold apricots. A phleem, to let blood cleanly, a small, sharp blade shaped like a bird's beak. Dried herbs, wormwood, sage, rue, rosemary. Theriac, a sticky black paste made from opium, viper flesh, and myrrh. A miracle cure, they say. Tastes like betrayal. You carry pomanders too, balls of crushed lavender and camphor wrapped in linen, to ward off the miasma, the bad air, the invisible poison believed to drift on wind and breath and sin. You wear them around your neck like charms. They don't work, but they smell better than the dead. It wasn't your idea. The mask came from France, or Italy, or perhaps hell itself. A leather hood, fitted with glass lenses for the eyes, and a long curved beak beneath. Inside the beak, vinegar-soaked sponges, dried roses, crushed cloves, and sometimes bits of burnt wool. Anything to purify the air. They said the shape helped, that the air had time to be cleaned before it reached your lungs. They also said it frightened evil spirits. It definitely frightens the living. Children scream. Dogs bark. Women cross themselves. You've become something less than a man, more than a ghost. And sometimes, when you take it off, you feel like you're peeling off your own skin. They used to bring incense burners to the sickbeds. Now they set fire to whole rooms. They believe smoke will drive out the plague. So you join them. You carry with you bundles of pine resin, tar-soaked rags, pitch bricks you light like candles. In one house, the stench was so thick, you gagged even through the mask. The family had sealed the windows and set a dozen pots of burning sage inside. They all died of smoke before the plague had a chance. You told the priest it was merciful. He said, "Smoke is holy." You didn't argue. You were too busy writing their names. He shows up with blood on his apron and a saw in his hand. Lanced 3 buboes before breakfast, he boasts. He's young, red-cheeked, too confident. You eye his tools, knives sharpened to a gleam, a hook for teeth, a hammer for bones. He has no herbs, no books, and no fear. Just a bucket full of blackened bandages and the smell of iron. Boil the bat out, he says. You ask how many lived. He pauses, then shrugs, then walks on. You write his name, too, just in case. The woman lies on a straw mattress, soaked through with fever. Her eyes are wide, fixed on something behind you. Her lips move in prayer. You check her pulse. Weak. Buboes under the armpits, tender and full. You apply a hot poultice of onions and butter, mixed with crushed figs and rose oil, a recipe you found on a page smudged with blood. She shudders. You whisper, easy. She grabs your sleeve. Am I being punished? You freeze, because no one's asked you that in weeks. You say no, but she keeps staring, like she doesn't believe you, like she knows you don't believe it either. There's a merchant who swears by raw onions and pigeon guts. Says it drew the poison right out of his neighbor's thigh. Never mind the neighbor died 2 days later. You've tried them all. Onions mashed and boiled, stuffed into socks. Vinegar mixed with crushed emeralds, expensive, pointless. Urine left to ferment in clay jars, then inhaled like incense. Ground unicorn horn, actually powdered ivory. The apothecary laughed as he sold it. Then there was the chicken cure. You strap a plucked chicken to the buboes. The bird, poor thing, absorbs the poison. If it dies, the sickness is leaving. If it lives, the patient might. Everyone dies, even the chicken. She lives on the edge of the city, in a stone hut half swallowed by moss. Locals call her Mad Magda, but you know better. She's forgotten more medicine than most monks ever learned. Her shelves are lined with jars, dried poppy, licorice root, yarrow, basil, mandrake, henbane, hemlock. She makes a paste that numbs the pain. She makes a tea that eases breath. She makes a tincture that helps the dying die softer. She refuses silver, only takes eggs, bread, or cloth. You ask why she never became a midwife. She snorts. Too many prayers. Not enough blood. You nod. You've come to respect women who deal in blood. They understand more than most priests. You visit the cloister for tinctures, or what's left of them. Only 2 monks remain. The others fled, or died, or started fasting and never stopped. They greet you with weary eyes and holy water. They offer prayer and burning frankincense. One shows you a scroll with a remedy. Soak the patient in rosewater, vinegar, and prayers of Saint Sebastian, while burning goat dung beneath the bed. You thank them. You don't use it. You can't. Not after the last one. The girl who choked on fumes and called for her mother, long dead. You buried her with the scroll tucked into her sleeve. It felt right somehow, even if it didn't help. You don't get miracles. Not anymore. But once, there was a boy, burning with fever, buboes like black grapes under his arms. He moaned in Latin. You didn't ask how he knew Latin. His father gave up and walked out. His mother knelt beside him until she fainted. You applied theriac. You burned herbs. You opened the buboes with your knife and bled him into a bowl. And he woke up. 2 days later, he sat upright and asked for bread. You gave it to him. You almost cried. But the next morning, he was gone. The bed still warm. No sign of sickness. No trace. His mother swore angels took him. You checked the ledger and wrote only, boy recovered. Not dead. That night, you dreamed of fireflies speaking Latin. You haven't had bread since. Every time you open your bag, you hesitate. Every time you cut open a bubo, you flinch. Every time someone says thank you, you feel like a fraud. You're not healing. You're managing, masking, buying time with herbs and vinegar and hope. Some call you brave. Some call you cursed. The truth, you're a man in costume, wandering through a war zone armed with dead theories and a sharp stick. But still you go. Because hope, even false hope, is sometimes all a person has. And because the plague doesn't wait. Not for truth. Not for science. Not for you. You're summoned to a manor again. Rich. Tall gates. Walls thick enough to hide secrets and the stink of death. The butler opens the door with a gloved hand. He doesn't speak. Inside, the Comtesse de Valier lies propped up on silk pillows, powdered face cracking at the edges. She insists she isn't dying. You see the purple blotches peeking from her sleeves. Restore her humors, her cousin demands. Use leeches, or crushed pearls. Crushed pearls? You humor them. You mix theriac into rosewater. You hold a pomander near her face. You whisper Latin. You nod when they thank you. Then you step outside and vomit in the hedge. They pay in gold. You bury the coins under your floorboards, like they might taint you otherwise. His name is Dr. Fouché, and he has perfect teeth. He stands in the market square in white robes, claiming to have cured 30 men in 5 days. He waves vials in the air, powdered amber, powdered toad, powdered lies. Clean the bowels, burn the bed, pray to Saint Roch while standing on one leg, he cries. People believe him, because he looks like he believes himself. You try to warn a woman with a sick daughter. She spits at you. You wear death on your face, she says. You watch her walk away, clutching a pouch of wormwood and powdered snake. You mark the girl's name in your ledger anyway. You'll probably see her again. Too soon. The house is quiet. No fire. No laughter. No food. Just the creak of wood and the smell of damp straw. She's 7, maybe 8. Her doll lies face down beside her. One eye missing. Stuffing falling out. Her skin is gray. Her lips purple. She moans in her sleep. You don't knock. There's no one to answer. You clean your hands, open your satchel, and you do what you can. Leeches on the inner thigh, a fig and mustard poultice on the chest, a cloth soaked in sage and vinegar under her nose. You sing an old lullaby under your breath. When you finish, you tuck her doll back beside her. You know it won't help, but it feels human. You stare at it before you put it on. The curved leather, the empty eyes, the beak packed with herbs. Does it protect you, or does it separate you? From the living, from the dying, from yourself. You haven't touched another person's bare hand in weeks. You haven't felt your own breath in longer. You haven't smelled the world since this all began. Some say the mask is sacred, a holy ward. Others say it's a curse, that you'll never take it off, even in death. You wonder if that's true. You wonder if anyone would notice. You find the Undertaker leaning against his cart, hands black with mud, eyes red with exhaustion. He offers you a drink from his flask, harsh wine mixed with something bitter. You take it. For a while, you both sit in silence. You ever feel like we're just moving pieces around? He asks finally. Like we're not fixing anything, just rearranging the dead. You nod, because what else is there to say? He looks at your mask. Do you even know if that thing works? You don't answer, because you don't know, and you're not sure if you want to. At dusk, you're called to a cobbler's home. 2 daughters, both sick. One already gone, her face covered with a rag. The other is barely breathing. The father, kneeling beside her, is begging. Please, do anything. Take me instead. You try your remedies, the ones that haven't worked 100 times before. Bloodletting, herbal compresses, fumigation with pine resin. The girl's eyes flutter. Her pulse weakens. You take the father's hand. You don't remove your glove. You tell him the truth. He cries into your shoulder. You let him, because sometimes that's all you can give. On your walk home, you think about what you've learned, that the mask is mostly for show, that theriac tastes like mud and does nothing, that herbs and onions can't undo rot, that bloodletting kills faster than the plague, and yet people call you doctor, as if the name alone can save them. You wonder if 1,000 years from now, people will laugh at your tools, your mask, your poultices, your fear, and you wonder if anyone will remember that you tried. You stop by a garden on your way home, an old one long abandoned. Among the weeds, a single rose still grows, pale and stubborn. You pick it. You place it in your mask, where the herbs usually go. The scent is faint but real. It feels like proof that not everything has died. Not yet. You write by candlelight. I cannot cure. I cannot save. I can only witness. And if witnessing is all I can offer, then I will offer it every day until I can no longer stand. Today, I carried a rose. You close the journal. The Undertaker's cart rolls by in the distance. You hear the bells. You tie the mask. Tomorrow will come, whether you want it or not. You finish the last burial just as the sky darkens to charcoal. The pit smolders with the breath of 100 corpses. The trench walls lean like old men. The dirt is damp and loose, even though it hasn't rained in days. You press the shovel into the earth and sigh. Your back cracks. Your knuckles ache. And then you hear it, a sound you know too well. Movement. Not rats. Not wind. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Someone is walking near the edge of the graveyard. Someone who shouldn't be. It happens on a Wednesday. You arrive early, before the crows, and notice it immediately. One of the graves has been opened. Not shifted. Not sunken. Dug. Clean edges. Tool marks. Someone removed a body. Not even a full day buried. You drop your shovel and kneel. The linen's still there, soaked red at the center. But the weight is gone. You look around. No footprints. No signs of animals. Just the same wind, the same ash in the air. But you know what this is. You've heard rumors. You just never thought they'd come this close. That night, you follow the sound. You don't carry a lantern. The moon is enough. The robbers are 2 men, gaunt, hunched, wearing black. They whisper in Latin and curse in French. They're quick, efficient. They use tools like yours, but smaller, cleaner. You watch from behind a wall of ivy as they lift a child's corpse into a sack like it's firewood. They don't even close the grave. You want to shout, to stop them, but your legs don't move. They disappear down a back alley, cart rattling behind them. You stand in the silence afterward, and you feel dirty, even though your hands are clean. The next day, you confront an old gravedigger named Lawrence, missing 2 fingers, breath like vinegar, one of the few who still talks straight. You ask him what happens to the stolen bodies. He doesn't blink. Scribes take the hands. Priests take the tongues. Surgeons take the rest. He tells you there's a market beneath the fish market, through a broken hatch and past a row of vinegar barrels. Go after sunset, he says. And don't bring silver. Bring favors. You ask what that means. He spits and says, you'll see. You find the plague doctor standing on a bridge, watching the water. His mask is off, but he's still wearing gloves. You tell him what you saw. He nods slowly, like he's been expecting it. I saw a monk carrying a body last week, he says, stuffed into a wine cart. You ask if he knows why. He answers, they say if you boil the right parts, you can make a cure. One that works. You ask if he believes that. He doesn't answer. He just looks at the river. And you wonder how long he's been staring. You wait until the sun is long gone and the bells of Compline echo faintly from the cathedral. The fish market is closed, slabs of blood and scales still wet on the stone. But behind the largest stall, hidden beneath a broken hatch covered in burlap, is the door Lorentz described. You lift it. A ladder descends into rank darkness. The smell hits you first, vinegar, mold, sweat, and something else. Something metallic. You climb down with your cloak wrapped tight. At the bottom, a crooked corridor opens into a small chamber lit by guttering candles stuck into skulls. You're not alone. There are 4 of them. One is a former priest, judging by the way he crosses himself backwards. One is a barber surgeon in blood-stained white. One is a nobleman's clerk, wearing a seal ring far too fine for this place. And the last, the woman in gray, sits behind the stall, quiet, precise. Their wares: tongues pickled in jars, hands sorted by size and age, hearts dried and dusted with crushed rue, a full infant swaddled in gauze with eyes sewn shut. The woman nods when you approach. You look like a man in need of remedies, she says. You tell her you bury the dead, not cut them. She grins. Not yet. You spot it by the stitching. The fine linen, yellowed but still elegant. The tiny green thread in the shape of a leaf. A detail only you would notice. You'd wrap that body yourself. A boy, died clutching a carving knife. You remember his sister screaming. Now he's lying on a blood-stained table, his chest opened. His organs harvested like herbs. You reel back. The clerk says, nothing goes to waste anymore. Even God must see the logic. You leave without another word. But your hands are fists the whole walk home. You and the plague doctor meet in the alley by the tannery. You tell him what you saw. He doesn't hesitate. We'll go tonight, he says. Bring the shovel. You don't ask questions. You bring it. The black market is quieter this time. Only the priest and the woman remain. The priest recognizes the doctor and starts to run. He doesn't get far. You block his path with the cart. The doctor raises his cane. The priest sobs. The woman doesn't flinch. You can't stop it, she says calmly. There will always be buyers. You say nothing. You just throw the jar of tongues into the wall. Let it shatter. She still doesn't flinch. But something in her eyes changes. You build a chair out of old coffin planks and station it by the north trench. Every night you sit. You listen. You wait. You nap in shifts, waking at the crunch of a rat, the creak of wind, the moan of morning timbers. You wedge broken glass into the dirt by the fresh graves. You place stones beneath shallow mounds, knowing they'll tear any sack dragged through the soil. It isn't foolproof, but it slows them. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's enough to scare them off. You sleep less. You grow meaner. But you feel something strange stirring in your chest again. Resolve. One evening, you catch a boy watching you. 12, maybe. Hands too clean for digging. Eyes too old for his age. You follow him back to a butcher's shop. Inside, 3 barrels. All sealed. You know what's inside before you even look. The butcher shrugs. Men pay. What's it to you? You snap. Your voice booms in a way it never has. These are children. He looks away. Says, so were mine. You leave him in silence. But as you walk back, you hear the hammering of nails. He's sealing the barrels tighter, just in case someone else comes. You're not sure if that's better or worse. The doctor suggests at first. "We can't stop them," he says, "but we can still honor them." So now, every third night, you bury a rose, one for each stolen corpse, sometimes white, sometimes red, sometimes made of paper. You place it at the head of the empty grave. You say no prayers. The silence is enough. He adds a new step, tying a ribbon to your shovel. Black at first. Then one night, he switches it to blue. You don't ask why, but you do the same. Eventually, the entire trench glimmers with soft blue strips fluttering in the wind. You notice the change in him. His mask stays on longer, even when you're alone. His notes become shorter, disconnected. He forgets names, dates, faces. Once, he stares at a corpse and asks if it's his own. You take his arm. You remind him who he is. He squeezes your hand in return. Hard. You don't speak of it again. But that night, you sit beside him at the edge of the trench and share your wine. And for the first time in weeks, he laughs. It's small, hollow, but it's human. You confront him in the apothecary's courtyard. He wears silk gloves and a ring carved with a lion's head. His scrolls are immaculate. His boots have never touched mud. You ask him about the thefts. He smiles like a man discussing weather. Better use for them than the worms, wouldn't you say? You don't reply. You dig holes. I fund scholars, he continues. You bury the past. I sell the future. He turns to leave. But you speak, loud enough for the crowd to hear. They had names. He pauses. Just once. Then he walks away. But 3 people stay behind. They ask how to help. That's when you know. You've wounded him, even if only with truth. That night, you and the doctor return to the trench with something wrapped in cloth. Not a body, but a ledger. The one you kept, full of names. Ages, dates, faces, stolen. You bury it beneath the rosebush you planted from a seedling weeks ago. The doctor sets a candle beside the mound, lets it burn until the wax melts into the soil. We will remember them, he says. Not to you, to the earth. You no longer fear the grave robbers. Now you look them in the eye when they pass. Some nod sheepishly. One dropped his bag and ran the other night. Inside, the half-wrapped body of a priest, with a coin sewn into his tongue. You reburied him with full rites. It wasn't much. Just the doctor, a hymn hummed low, and a second-hand crucifix. But it felt like defiance, as if saying, you took his breath, but not his dignity. You stitch gloves. The doctor mixes dyes. You plant lavender along the trench line. And together, you build something odd, a wooden frame, strung with bells, stretched across the path to the graveyard. Tripwire, the doctor says. Not to catch them, just to warn us. And when the bells ring, you'll rise. Not as a soldier, not as a saint, but as 2 tired men who refuse to let the dead be forgotten. And that, in this world of shadows, might be the most radical act of all. It begins with a seal. Not wax, lead. Heavy and cracked, stamped with the crest of the Guild of Sacred Interments. You find it nailed to the gate of the southern graveyard. The parchment reads, henceforth, all burial and handling of the deceased shall fall under the authority of the Guild, by decree of His Grace the Bishop, and in consultation with the Crown's Plague Advisory. All independent laborers are to cease operations immediately or face penalty of fine and imprisonment. The dead are not yours. You stare at the parchment for a long time. You feel the heat rise in your chest, not from fever, but fury. The dead are not yours? Then whose are they? You try to argue with the town scribe. He barely looks up from his ink pot. The bishop is protecting sanctity, he says. Too many unblessed burials. Too many errors. You counter. Too many unclaimed dead. Too many forgotten. He shrugs. This is not a matter of emotion. It's about order. You glance around the scriptorium. Clean floors, full shelves, not a whiff of rot or ash. You realize then that they've never once been to the trenches, to the carts, to the homes that reek of rosemary and despair. And yet they claim the right to decide what dignity means. The next day, a priest arrives at the trench. He wears a golden stole and rides a white horse. You wonder if either has ever seen blood. He reads from a scroll. From this day forth, no man may bury the dead without the rites of the church, performed under ecclesiastical authority, to prevent the rise of unrest souls and safeguard the living. You raise your hand. Ask simply, will you perform those rites for the 72 buried yesterday? He blinks. Those were not sanctioned burials. You clench your jaw. They were people. He tugs his gloves tighter and turns away. The smell of incense lingers long after he's gone, sweet, suffocating, and entirely useless. The Guild of Sacred Interments isn't made of undertakers. It's made of men in cloaks with soft hands and ink-stained fingers. They don't bury. They license. You're told to attend a formal registration. In a cold room lined with iron hooks and crucifixes, you stand among a dozen others. Some diggers, some carpenters, even a few widows who'd buried their own. A man reads out clauses. Only certified shovels may be used. Grave depth must match canonical standards. No unblessed cloth may touch the dead. All burials to be recorded in the Book of Passing, held by the guild treasurer. You raise your hand again. What if there's no priest? No cloth? No time? The answer. Then the body must wait. You try. You really do. You file the forms. You wait in line. You sign your name in the book. But the corpses don't wait. They bloat. They burst. They call to the crows. One morning, you find 4 children lying outside the trench, still in their nightshirts. A note pinned to the eldest. Priest refused to come. No license issued. Please don't let them rot. You bury them quietly. No priest. No salt. No prayers. Just you, the shovel, and the sound of the wind cutting through your rage. He returns from the university quarter with bruises on his ribs and a fine for malpractice. Apparently, wearing a bird mask and treating patients without approval from the Collegium Medicorum is now illegal. They accused me of necromancy, he mutters as you help him into the shed. Told me theriac is a restricted substance, and that leeches must be guild-weighed. You ask what he did. He chuckles, wincing. I told them to weigh their own leeches. You both laugh. It feels like treason. The first message comes scratched into the back of a coffin lid. There's more of us. Find the black door under the mill. The second is a bundle of black cloth left in your trench, shaped like a body, but filled with bricks. A signal. You go to the mill at night. Knock 3 times. The door creaks open. Inside, 6 undertakers, 2 midwives, a plague washerwoman, and the barkeep whose wife died unattended. They don't chant. They don't fight. They plan. Because if the guild controls death, they must control dignity. And not all are willing to surrender that. It starts with a song. Low, wordless humming, in the same rhythm used before the church took hold. Then come the herbs, not basil or thyme, but rue, yarrow, and wormwood. A woman wraps a corpse in bark, then clay. Another burns ashes and mixes them into the grave soil. Ancient protections, she says. So they're not alone. You glance around. These aren't pagans. They're grieving people. They're doing what they can. And in that moment, you understand. The guild can claim the laws. The church can claim the rights. But the people will always claim the dead. They arrive with polished boots and brass-topped canes. 3 men from the guild, bearing scrolls and swords. They find you in the act, laying a body wrapped in oilcloth unlicensed. They demand your name, your shovel, your arrest. You stand your ground. So does the plague doctor. Behind you, the others begin to arrive, the midwife, the washerwoman, the barkeep. No one speaks. No one needs to. The guild men falter. One drops his scroll. Another steps back. And when the third draws his sword, the doctor pulls a jar of theriac from his cloak and holds it high. Unlicensed, he says. The man lowers the blade. They leave in silence. And that night, every trench in the city gets a rose. The printer's apprentice makes the first forgery. It's crude, uneven ink, the wrong crest, but no one looks too closely at parchment covered in death dust. They call them phantom licenses, signed by fictional bishops, authorized by invented officials. bearing wax seals pressed with buttons and belt buckles. You start carrying 3 at all times. One for yourself, one for the doctor, one for the body. You don't feel guilty, because what the guild calls fraud, you call grace. You find him sleeping sitting up, his mask still on, his gloves still stained. He's scribbling in his notebook, though his hand barely moves. The lines no longer make sense. Scribbles, circles, unreadable Latin. You ask when he last ate. He shrugs. I had something. You make stew. He doesn't touch it. But later, you catch him holding the spoon. Just holding it, like it's the last thing tethering him to the earth. You sit beside him. You don't speak, because silence, you've learned, is sometimes the best kind of medicine. You find it by accident. In a chest of your father's things, old contracts, burial invoices, and beneath it all, a parchment wrapped in oilcloth. A charter, signed by King Philip the Fair himself. It reads, "Let it be known that in times of pestilence, the rites of burial revert to the stewards of the land, that the dead may rest and the living be spared." You read it 3 times. It's real and binding. The guild has overstepped. The crown once gave burial rights to you. You run to the doctor. Show him the parchment. His hands shake as he touches it. "It's a resurrection," he says softly. You don't keep the charter hidden. You bury copies at the foot of the trench. You hang one in the tavern. You slip one under the guild's chapel door. They don't respond. But suddenly, their messengers vanish. Their inspectors grow quiet. Their enforcers? Now just rumors. And the priest with the golden stole? He comes back, hat in hand. He says nothing, just sprinkles holy water over the trench, whispers a short prayer, and walks away. Not a word of complaint. Not a demand. Just respect. For the first time, the doctor rises earlier than usual. He shaves, eats, even whistles, poorly but earnestly, as he folds his gloves. "You look alive," you remark. "Don't ruin it," he replies. He helps with the burial that day, carries one end of the plank, writes each name in the ledger with neat, careful script. You finish before dusk. And for once, instead of returning to the shed or the trench, you sit by the riverbank together. You watch ducks. You feed them crumbs from moldy bread. He says, "This is the first day I've felt useful in months." You don't say it aloud, but the truth is simple. He never stopped being useful, only unappreciated. It arrives on cream parchment, sealed with ecclesiastical wax. To the gravedigger and the masked man, His Grace the Bishop requests your presence for counsel and clarification regarding recent disruptions. Attend at your discretion. No guard shall accompany. D.S. Vicar General. You read it 3 times. The doctor stares at it, says, "It's either a trap or a confession." You decide to go. If they mean to punish you, let them look you in the eye when they do it. The cathedral is half empty. No incense. No procession. Just a bishop in plain linen and a cup of thin wine. He does not offer a chair, but he does speak plainly. "We know what you've done. The fake papers, the midnight burials, the pagan rites, the roses." He pauses, then adds, "And we cannot stop you. You expect anger. What you hear instead is weariness. I've buried 3 brothers," he says, "and I still don't know where 2 of them are." He sighs. "If this is sin, let God weigh it." He pours you each a glass of wine. You don't drink, but you don't flee. They offer you legitimacy. A special exemption, they call it. You'll bury. The doctor will treat. The guild will look the other way. In return, you hand over your lists, your plans, your people. You nod, thank them, then leave. That night, you burn the offer parchment over the trench, because legitimacy means nothing if it's born of silence. You'd rather be unlawful than untruthful. At the edge of the graveyard, you plant a wooden marker, not for a person, but for a promise. It reads, "So long as I draw breath, the dead will be named, buried, and remembered. Not for the law, not for the church, but for the living they leave behind." You hammer it into the soil. Then you light a candle. And though the plague still lingers, though the bells still toll, for one brief moment, The wind smells only of lavender. You've never seen his face. Not fully. The plague doctor sleeps with the mask by his side, eats behind a screen, bathes, when he does, in water laced with vinegar and secrecy. But one morning, after a storm clears the sky and the trench smells momentarily like wet stone instead of rot, you find him unmasked, sitting in the doorway, sunlight catching in his hair. He doesn't look up. He just says, "I was married. Once." Then he places the mask back on. And that is all. Later that week, a girl comes to the trench. She's no older than 10. Dirt on her cheeks, a cloth doll clutched to her chest. She holds something out to you, a bundle wrapped in red string. "My mum said if you bury this with my dad, he won't come back angry." You nod solemnly and take it. It smells like sage and cinnamon. You don't ask how she knows about such things. You just place it with the man's body, wrap his arms gently around it, and say a small wordless prayer. Because sometimes superstition is all a child has. You write more now. Not just names and dates, but stories. The man with the blue scarf always tipped his hat, even to beggars. The midwife who lost her 5th child still hummed lullabies to the dead. The baker who baked 3 loaves a day after her oven cracked, out of habit and grief. You hide the pages beneath your cot, not because you're ashamed, but because no one else is writing them down. And if you don't, who will? You've begun to notice them. Small things, tucked into pockets, sewn into hems, placed under tongues. A coin with a hole punched through, a carved ivory comb, a lock of baby hair tied with gold thread, a slip of paper with a single word. Wait. Each one speaks. Not in sound, but in meaning. You try to guess what they were meant to say. "I remember you. This belonged to her. Meet me again, somewhere beyond this." The doctor says you're imagining it. But later, you catch him pocketing a folded note. And you both pretend you didn't see. It happens not at dawn, but dusk. You're seated by the fire pit, the heat barely fighting the early frost. The doctor joins you, unusually quiet, even for him. He removes his gloves first, then his hat, then, gently, slowly, the mask. You say nothing. He sets it beside him and stares into the fire. His face is younger than you expected, but hollowed, as if sculpted by grief. One eye is bruised purple, not from violence, but from exhaustion. A scar curls under his left cheek, like a tear permanently caught in motion. "I wore this mask when my son died," he says. You nod. It is not the kind of pain that needs a response. Only company. The trench is unusually quiet today. No new bodies. No prayers. Just the two of you, standing amid the rows of anonymous mounds. You find yourself wandering further than usual, to a patch where the soil is different, older. Harder. You remember. Your wife. Your boy. Their graves are here, somewhere beneath this tangle of stone and weeds. You can't mark them. There were too many. The priest didn't come that week. You drop to one knee. Press your hand into the dirt. Say their names. Whispered. Private. You don't cry. But when the doctor passes by, he nods. As if he too has been here before. She appears every 3rd evening. No one knows her name. No one's ever spoken to her. She wears a gray cloak with the hood up and leaves a bundle of flowers at the same unmarked trench. Every time. Always the same place. Never says a word. One night you approach. She pauses, half-turned. You expect fear or silence. Instead, she says softly, "My sister, the youngest." She sang when she worked, even when folding the dead. And then she walks away. You leave the flowers where they fall. No one dares remove them. You start finding notes. Folded scraps, hidden under collarbones or tucked inside sleeves. They read like fragments of dreams. "I forgive you." They lied. "We kissed behind the bakery." "Tell mother I wore the dress." The doctor begins collecting them in a pouch. Not to keep, but to read aloud in the evenings under his breath. He calls it giving them a voice. Sometimes, the wind carries his words beyond the fire. You imagine the dead hearing him. And for once, not feeling so alone. The fire is nearly out now. Only a few embers remain, glowing faintly, like the last breaths of stories no longer spoken aloud. You sit with the doctor in silence. No masks, no tools, no names. Just two men, shaped by grief, stitched together with duty, and made strangely whole by the weight they carry. Around you, the trench rests. Not silent, never that, but softer. A child's ribbon flutters in the breeze. A rosemary bundle clings to the side of a pine coffin. An old rosary glints beside the wrist of a body wrapped in linen and ink. These were lives. Messy, tender, afraid, and somehow still speaking. Even now, especially now, you glance over at the doctor. His head is bowed, eyes closed, lips moving in a rhythmless prayer, or perhaps a recipe. You can never quite tell the difference with him. You remember something your mother used to say. The body is temporary, but a whisper can live forever. So tonight you whisper, not to the heavens, not to the trench, but to the names that never made it onto parchment, to the lovers buried holding hands beneath sour earth, to the child who sang in the cellar, to the merchant who left a gold coin in his shoe, just in case, to every soul lost, but never forgotten. You whisper, and somehow, they whisper back. The masks are hung, the trench is filled, and for now, the night is quiet. You've traveled far tonight, through whispers stitched into pockets, stories buried in clay, and grief disguised as superstition. But here's the truth, softly spoken. The dead never truly disappear. Not when we remember their names. Not when we bury them with care. Not when someone, anyone, still whispers their story. In a world that forgot how to listen, two men kept listening. One with a shovel, one with a mask, and both with hearts too stubborn to stop. If you're still with us, still awake, or just beginning to drift, leave a little note in the comments. Maybe tell us where you're watching from, or which token you'd leave behind if you had only one story to tell. Because every grave holds a memory, and every memory deserves a place in the world. Until next time, sleep gently, remember kindly, and if you wake up with ash on your sleeve and the smell of herbs in the air, don't worry. It's just history, whispering back.